Hello, everybody. We're back again on another cliffhanger. Episode 7, part 3. We just can't get out of the bind. We're having an epic adventure now following the trail of destruction. And we've got a really exciting development for the next part of the tale. So we're still in Carberry. We're still looking at Carberry. So on this map, Carberry is right here, okay? Look at the forts there. Look at the star forts, the Carberry star forts. So there's a cathedral, a large one here, or a smaller one, not a mini one, not the largest, the second largest. We looked at that down below. So Carberry, so this is the edge of a star, okay? Edge of canals, and here you had the mat, the well itself. So these are the wells. It looks like these are the wells anyway. The ones that are covered seem to be the wells, and all here is all stars as well generally. But we found out that Carberry, this is actually a very important place because it is where Nuada or Nocton, husband of Boan. So Boan's husband actually he had a fort here. This was his. This was his spot. This was his fortress. Nocton, leader of the Tuatha De Danann, who lost his arm in the first battle of Moytura and was deposed as leader of the Tuatha De Danann, and then fought against Bress to win back his kinship of his sovereignty for Ireland. This was his spot anyway, and it's on the Boyne. It's the source of the Boyne. It's Carberry. So Nocton's well, the well of Segus. So Segus must be Nocton as well. I'm only putting these pieces together now. As I said, there's so many different names, and I've only literally just come across that this moment. So we've got the well of Segus feeding Segus's. So everybody probably had a star themselves. And all the star people, the Firbolg, the Normans, the Tuatha De Danann, they're all the same people. They're all the same. They're all the same lineage. They're all like a brother and sister type of scenario. They all seem to have had areas of land. So like Nuada, the leader, he was here. So Sláine, whoever he was over here. And the Dagda, that's Dublin there. We don't want Dublin, we want Boyne. So up here. So all of these, Ratotha, Shockland, I must have a look in those areas. So like these are all stars. These are all the major ones. These are the wells. Sorry, not wells. I'm going to call them wells. Star wells. These are star wells that burst and covered the land with the dirt. Pretty wild. Pretty wild. And we're looking at it after it covered the land, after the devastation, obviously. So everybody had their own little bit, but this was Nocton, husband of Boan. So we're fairly sure that the Firbolgs and the Normans are one and the same. We're also going to take a look at St. Patrick. He's got a relation to a lot of areas. We're going to look back into him again. There's the man himself, St. Patrick. And an interesting thing we're going to discuss about St. Patrick before we jump into Nuada and Nocton. Look at this fancy book here. Not a fancy book altogether. Fancy hat too. But he uses the triple. He uses this to initiate the triple religion. The Father, Son, and the Holy Spirit. He uses to signify Christianity when it comes. But that's also the triple goddess. So Morigna, the people who said they would support American in his battles. Maybe they were supporting the slaves. Maybe that's what happened. Maybe Ireland, I'm just going to throw out an idea here. So you have various canal fortifications that have wells in them and they have canal systems joining them. They're all, the people all seem to be related to each other. There is people in charge and we hear their tales. They are the Fir Bolg, the Fomorians, and the Tuatha De Danann. Whether they're all the same or not, maybe they're different branches. Maybe they're the Fir Golan, the Fir Donan, and the Fir Bolg, the three of those. Um, and they're all children of Nemed. But anyway, they are going about their civilization, and this goddess, triple goddess, Morrigan, Morigna, Eru, Banba, and Fola, or Bab, Maeve, and Vaca, this triple goddess seems to be involved in the thick of everything all through it. And I'm asking when we talk about Patrick, does this signify the triple goddess? Does this signify that this is who? Is he American? Is he American, the guy who came in and conquered the Tuatha De Danann? Is this gentleman here American? And he allied himself with the triple goddess. And they gave him Ireland as a result. And they were the ones that threw the locks on the wells that flooded the world. It would be interesting to look into that mythology. I don't know, is there a myth, something similar to that? But I wonder, was it those three and their lineages, because obviously I'm sure they had help. They've been around. Their mother was Ernmas and their father was Dalebath, the two progenitors of the Fir Bolg / Fomorian / Tuatha De Danann race. Dalebath was a Fomorian and Ernmas was a Tuatha De Danann, and they were the union of the two. And that's where all of these races came. And these races are the ones that seems to have built this Norman civilization. And then they battled with each other. And then someone opened all the wells, which are the star fortifications, which are all now buried in bog and mud and water. And then we re-enter history in the 1600s with Oliver Cromwell and the Battle of the Boyne, which could also just be the same battle as earlier, another battle, or they could just be retellings of battles that were happening. Maybe there was a lot of infighting happening in the country. Maybe they were fighting, but technologically, with their canals, they were close, but they were far. So we don't really know what the world looked like exactly, but it looked different than it is now, and the perception of the world needs to shift to that canal system world. But is this guy American? We'll look at that at some stage. And he went to Slane and he went to the well of Slane. He went to the well in Mayo, in the Mullala River. Gas. Can't stop saying gas because my mind is just blown. Like a lot of this information, I'm becoming aware of it as you are. I've never looked this in depth into Ireland before. And I certainly have not done a presentation about it. I did write a little thing years ago about the Anunnaki and that lineage and how that links into gods who have devolved. So like devolution from godliness, and we are the end result. Essentially, humans are the lowest evolution currently. But we lived beside them in this world of canals. And they make it out like there was wars and battles and devastation all the time. I'm just not sure. I'm just not sure about that. So anyway, I'm coming to terms with this information almost as you are because it's all new to me, and that's what makes it exciting. So let's keep going. Holy wells, 3,000 of them, 3,000 holy wells. So if there's 3,000 holy wells in Ireland, I wonder, is it 3,000 fortifications? I wonder. Carberry again. So this is Nocton. This is Nocton's well. So his fort seems to have been over to the east of it. It's now a bog. So well, Slowly does it, guys. Take your time. So here's another picture. I'm going to read a little bit. The majority, this is the mansion. So this is the mansion that looks like Muckross that we ended up in the last episode with the chimneys, you might remember. So the majority of the room that sits on top of the hill at Carberry, Nachton's well, Segus's well, dates from the late 16th century and early 17th century. However, the site itself has a history dating back to pre-Christian times. The hill was known as Seed Nachton. So Seed is a fairy hill, a fairy mound. And I'd say these mounds, a fairy mound is not a mound, it's a well. And maybe you can go into them. Maybe they've got vast, maybe there's a whole world under in those wells, in those underground bogs. Maybe there's a whole world going on. Oh, wouldn't that be mad if there was a whole world going on underneath? Because underneath the tunnels and the caverns, like they all exist. I think like they definitely go underground, and there is a system of tunnels that exist all over the world. They used to have like super fast tunnel transport, I'd say. Like, have you ever seen the videos? Um, whose videos was it now? Uh, could have been UAP, could have been Philip actually, could have been Philip Drzinin as well. But of the underground tunnels and trains, so we use them now. We've got an underground. Ireland doesn't, but everywhere else does. They never dug out Ireland's underground, I'd say. But they are probably, they have access to all of that. They're probably living under the ground. Maybe that's what they never dug out. Maybe that was the agreement. Maybe when the invaders came, so the slaves took over, Patrick, American, allied with the Morrigan in order to take over Ireland and the world, even. Maybe, who knows? Did it base, maybe, I don't know, did it happen here originally? But it looks, the stories match the places. Um, so I don't even know where I was there, so I'm going to carry on reading. So the castle sits was the centre of a territory known as Carba y Carja and was associated with the sept of the mighty Enil clan, who were the lords of Carbery, according to the annals of the Four Masters. So then we can say that Nachton, so if we bring it up to modern times, the Enales, that was the Nachton faction then. So Nuada's men, the people of Nuada, would have been the Enales. So were they all fighting? Like, was there a period where these canal civilizations went into a gigantic war with each other? It ended obviously, like I'm sure because they were kind of half related that like they were able to revive themselves, so it was kind of, it didn't matter, like you could die and you could be revived again in the wells, like the stories say about Dean Ceacht, and he revived all the Tuatha Dé Danann, and then the Fomorians dropped all of the stones into the well, and then they couldn't revive the dead anymore. So is that what was happening? They could revive themselves for a while, and then suddenly they couldn't, and then they were done and dusted, um, and then it was no fun anymore. You could, if you killed your neighbor, you couldn't revive him, um, and then maybe the battles escalated from there. Once the death um, increased, maybe there was massive battles. I'm not sure, but somebody, maybe it wasn't, maybe the invader just came in and took advantage of the situation. So the slaves took advantage of the warring. So the brothers were warring. That's the way the story goes, that Macrana and Macacht and his other brother, who were, I think, either the sons, the grandsons of Manaman MacLear, some relation to the Dagda as well. They were arguing, and at that stage, the Milesians overtook the country, and they were the Roman Empire. Essentially, they were Saint Patrick, I reckon, and maybe those battles were the ones where all the forts, the Battle of Saint Patrick was like when Saint Patrick came in. It was during a time like he was converting people, they say, to Catholicism, but really this was the time that the wars were happening. And maybe this was going on. Maybe there was this weird undercurrent of religion going on at the time. Who knows what the mindset was of the people in this canal world? Maybe they were very, very removed from nature as well. Like there doesn't seem to be any space for nature. There's talk about irrigation of crops and things like that. But it's a very orderly world, the world of the canals. Very orderly. So Niall of the Nine Hostages was an antecedent of the clan of Uisneach, and the name of Carberry is believed to derive from Carbra, one of Niall's sons. So Niall of the Nine Hostages is a very famous Irish story. I can't remember it off the top of my head, but he's a 5th century king of Ireland. So 5th century king, again, we're talking about the 5th century, we're talking about I-500, we're talking about the year 500, which is also the year 1500. They parallel each other, they're the same year. It's like they just layered history upon itself again and again and again and put the same story out there with different names again and again. So think of Niall of the Nine Hostages. He's a Norman and he is Nocton, Nocton or one of Nocton's sons. He is of Nuada's clan, is what he is of. There was lots of battles here. It was destroyed. Duke of Schools. So 1574, it passes over then to the new controllers, the reign of Elizabeth. Red Hugh O'Donnell was attacking castles during the times of the Pale, which is the early is the 1500s. And then in the late 1500s, the English took it over, or the so-called English, but the invaders passed it over. So that's this mansion here, this castle, which is Nocton or Nuada, who Nuada also features in the what's it called, Hellboy, the movie. He's the main evil character, Nuada. So maybe he was a badass. Could well have been like. Who knows what these people were like? They were flipping deranged by the sounds of the stories, anyway. But it has history right up until the Irish Rebellion of 1798, apparently. I thought I had a little bit about that in here. But I mean, once again, we look at that with a pinch of salt and we think, the Irish Rebellion in 1798. Was there a rebellion in 1798? Or was everything just tipping away? And there was a very low population all over the place. And most of the people that were left were kind of walking around half zombified. And then they were just becoming the next leaders, or where did the new people even come from after the flood? Where did they introduce them from? Did everyone go into the wells? Is that why? Here's an interesting, weird, out of nowhere sidewinder. That if you ever look at the grave art, or what you'd call grave art, so statues, in cemeteries and grand cemeteries, particularly like in Italy, like in Milan. There's a few, and there's one in Egypt is very cool as well. But all of those places, all those cemeteries, they're all buried as well. Like the top of the cemeteries are literally the top of the forts. That's why cemeteries are popping out. I'd say you probably wouldn't find too many cemeteries on the plain. Now that would be a very interesting one. Do we find cemeteries on the plain very often? I'd be very intrigued to see if we see that at any stage. But what I'm saying is that when they fled the flood, when they ran away from the flood, were they able to flee? Like they seem to have, like if people were fleeing, let's say, the art, we consider the art, right? Look, the art, they look like they look like real people. So let's pretend for a moment, as ludicrous as it sounds, that they were potentially real people and that they've somehow got turned to stone. Look at these pictures, find it yourself on YouTube and have a look at it. It's spooky, very, very spooky, but they're in graveyards all over the place. So I wonder, were they trying to escape to like the life machines? Like we see in graveyards and abbeys and churches, they seem to be related with health and life-giving properties. So were they trying to escape to these places, or is that the places that they just automatically came to because they climbed up the forts to the top of the forts to escape the flood. The flood just kept rising higher and higher, and they were all sitting on top of the forts at the end, and then the forts eventually just all got covered. And then we're just left with the graveyards, and the people turned to stone in sitting on the graves, lying on the graves, shouting at each other. It's crazy. Um, I'm not going to introduce it here now. It's a totally story for another day. But if you think of where would you escape to during a cataclysm, you'd escape to the healing places. And if they were potentially, uh, if you could find those healing places or portals, even maybe they were portals. Like maybe there was a magic, like maybe those casks, literally, you get a new body just out the portal, you've got a brand new body again, and you're back. And you have your own set one, so like your name will be on it, like a gravestone, for example. Um, but I'm saying back now during the Star Civilization, back in this other world, that if the graveyards were part of it, which it looks like they were, they had a very different function than they have today. So we have to consider that possibility in it, in our discussions, because they are so anomalous. They have to be considered in this discussion. And it's a magical discussion as well. Let's just not forget. I know that it can sound ridiculous, but we're talking about magic. We're putting the myths onto the landscape, and we're talking about it as if it was a magical happening. So that's the way we're going with this series. And I think there's from time to time there's going to be talks of giant trees and um, health rejuvenation machines that are abbeys and graveyards, and the wells that are related to them. And could they have gone underground? Like, was there access to somewhere else from these places? And they say that the Tuatha De Danann went to the fairy mounds. They went under the ground into the mounds, and they gave the land to the Milesians, who were the slaves that had revolted potentially against the masters, the gods of old, and they revolted with Marduk. If you're talking about old Anunnaki, but in our case, we're looking at potentially that. I suppose, like if you had American, so let's say if Marduk was Saint Patrick, for example, um, the leader of them, pretending to be a slave, and then he united all of the humans against the gods and banished the gods after this cataclysm happened. So the gods were so distraught, the Firbolg, the Normans, the fairies, they'd caused they'd allowed this terrible cataclysm to happen on their watch. Due to their fighting, they destroyed their whole civilization, due to their pettiness. And it was taken advantage of then by American when he came to Ireland, and let's say he was already in Ireland, for example, um, and he's Marduk. He is the son of Ea, and maybe he's the son of, maybe he's Bress. He's the same guy. Eru maybe had his back. His mother decided that after the Battle of the Firbolg or the Fomorians, maybe Bress won. Maybe the Fomorians won that battle. Maybe Bress is the leader of the slaves, and he united the people against the the ruling classes who lived in luxury, but also lived well. But there was classes. Um, so is that what happened? Uh, it's very possible. It's very like Eru and Bress, the mother and daughter, or the mother and son combination, or the mother son, or the daughter son triad, like the Virgin Mary and Jesus, all of those triads, Horus and Isis. Um, but the father is also the son, I think, in the same way as in the same person, maybe. I don't know, is there a son involved? Or is there the father involved? Is the father the Dagda and the mother is Eru? Well, the father is Elaha, but is Elaha the Dagda? It's another question that we're going to kind of like. He could very well be. He was the he was the husband of the Morrigan, or the Morrigna, but he also had um, an affair with Boann, and they had a son called Angus. Is Angus St. Patrick? Angus the lover. We'll look into him at some stage. Um, but are they all, whoever, somebody rose up against somebody else, um, and there was a load of mud dumped over in the process. However, that happened. Maybe that was the catalyst. But anyway, after that massive event, so maybe it wasn't directly after that event. I don't know if it was after that event, but I'm assuming that after the flood event, when all the mud came everywhere and caused bogs and just ruined the world, their world was destroyed. It was gone. The world was gone that they had, their beautiful world, due to their own arrogance. And what was left was a broken world with a load of people shouting for their heads, say, and saying, "Get out, get out, get out." And maybe they left and they went into the mounds, they went under the ground and they lived, and maybe they still live in underground cities in Ireland. How about that one there? Situated in the townland of Carberry, dominated by the ruins of a Tudor mansion. So the Tudor mansion, so I presume that one in Muckross was the Tudor mansion, and it's a fairy hill. So we looked at this already. It's also called Siad Nachtan in the Din Shanachas. Nachtan is described as the husband of Buan, the son of Nuadu. Elsewhere, Nachtan is the son of Labrad. Similarly, in the Book of Invasions, see they're called different names. But anyway, this is the seed of Nachtan. So here, look, only Nachtan and his three cupbearers, Flesk, Lam, and Luam, were permitted to visit Tubber Segas, the well of wisdom, in which 9 hazel trees dropped their wisdom-bearing nuts. In that well swam the salmon of wisdom, which ate the nuts. Eating one could imbue a person with knowledge of all things. In the Book of Invasions, Nachtan killed Capra and was in turn killed by Sigmal, the grandson of Midir. So was he just rejuvenating after he was killed? In the Book of Invasions, maybe not. I don't know. Was that after they lost the ability? I can't remember. But Nachtan, so this is where he lives. This was his well, and he had a hazel tree that 9 sacred hazel trees dropped their wisdom-bearing nuts. So now I'm starting to think, with the canal civilization, I'm starting to think, right, they probably didn't get rid of nature altogether, because it did have the power and they harnessed the power of nature. But what they did was they turned nature into like a concrete circuit, which they used to power a civilization for themselves. And let's say this example here, the well of wisdom in which 9 sacred hazel trees dropped their wisdom-bearing nuts. Like maybe, like we see on these star forts, we see a load of bog and dirt and mud, and they're very boring bits of masonry. But I wonder if, let's say, I'm not sure if they were originally masonry. Like there is the possibility that they were made from a more woody type material in the past, which petrified. There is the potential to consider that in our conversation. And if that was the case, you'd wonder, it doesn't really matter if it's the case or not, actually. Let's consider it in our thoughts as a possibility. But let's also consider that there was 9 hazel trees growing at the top of the fort, and that they had magical hazelnuts because they knew how to make magical hazelnuts. They just knew how to do it, and it was a cool well for that reason. And they ate the salmon from the well, probably. Nachtan was probably a madman for the salmon from the well. He was like eating salmon, probably non-stop, knowledge salmon all the time. And he was the husband of Boann, who the Boyne is named after. So Boann, so here we go again. This is just like coming to me as I'm talking. So Boann went to the well in the myth, and nobody's allowed to go to the well of Segis except for the cupbearers, Flesk, Lam, and Luam. They were the only ones that were allowed to visit it. So I wonder, did Boam go to the well and she opened the well? And Boam is very easy to equate to the Morrigan or Morigna, who you could also equate to Elaha as well. Like, I'm beginning to think that that Nuada and Elaha and Dagda are all the one person. That the tales of this, they've made one person into three, and this is common as well. They do this. They take one and they turn into three. I've seen people make videos about that actually. So I wonder, and they take one person like Eru and they turned her into three. So she's actually one goddess. So Eru is one. And the son is Angus, he's probably the son, he's one. So there was probably one son, there was one daughter. Like of the main family, there was one brother, one sister. They had the son and the daughter together. And the mother shacked up with the son in order to overthrow the whole show, is what it looks like in this. And that mirrors tales of the Vedas. So in the tale of the Vedas, it tells of Indra, who after a mighty battle is consumed with radiation poisoning, and he becomes unable to bear children. And this is the story now as far as I'm aware. I can't remember perfectly off the top of my head. But anyway, he ends up fathering several kids with his mother. And one of those kids is considered to be like Indra. You could equate him to Enki of the Anunnaki. So Indra and Enki, you could probably equate him in our case to Dagda or Elaha. And Indra, he had several kids with his mother, and they went down and they wreaked havoc on everything. So are we seeing the same repeat here of the havoc wreaking? Did they, like, maybe when you open one, like it says that in the Anunnaki story that Inanna. So the goddess Inanna. So the Anunnaki stories, for if you're not aware of them, they come from the Middle East, Iraq, Babylon. And the story says that Inanna got control of what were called the Mies, and she got control of the Mies from Enki. And so Enki, who would be the son, gave her control of the Mies. Well, Enki would have been her uncle, I think. I'm not sure of the lineage. I'm not going to get into it. But anyway, she got the Mies and she wreaked havoc on everything. So I wonder, was there an override for the wells? And the mother, who's the mother goddess, so she is the top dog, like it looks like she decided, like Eru, Banba, Fowla, this goddess, the daughter of Delbath and Ernmas, a member of the Morrigan, possibly also like Bridget and Maeve in the St. Patrick times or in the Catholic times, like Bridget and Maeve the pirate. And could you program them all, because that's what you do, you just open them. And then you make up a massive story to blame it on the total opposite, that God was angry with the people and he caused the flood and he saved a few people. But whereas, well, maybe like you think of, like, say, St. Patrick, he went around after the flood, possibly. There's certainly the possibility of that. So before and after. The flood was fine if you knew it was coming, is what I'm thinking. That Eru seems to have opened up the gates and the place flooded out with water and mud, the whole lot. Like the whole world, is it? Maybe is it everywhere? Is it local? It doesn't need to be everywhere, I suppose, but if you wanted to do everywhere, you could. Like imagine the one override for all the wells all over the world and just press it. Open. Psh, massive. Over the whole place, overrun. Absolute carnage. Crystal control then like Atlantis. Do you know, was this the downfall of Atlantis that was spoken about? The goddess, almost the mother goddess, um, betraying the father god figure and destroying the canal civilization that was falling apart at its seams. Is that what happened? Is that what happened? And that's mimicked all over the world then. So the wells and the history. So back to like, was there nature? I think there was nature. I think it was actually beautiful. Now that I look at it, I was thinking it was it. Like I'm trying to picture what the civilization would look like, and I was thinking just concrete. And I'm thinking maybe it wasn't concrete. Maybe it was like a more of an organic type of a material, a more still life in it, like crystal related almost. Maybe it was like crystal. Um, like that would make sense if it was crystal. If everything was crystal and had a memory, and the crystal and the water would work with the crystal. So imagine a gigantic crystal canal um, civilization that also had huge amounts of nature that linked in with the crystals. So the crystals enhanced the nature. So they came in and they created this crystal civilization that used nature with churches and cathedrals, star fortifications or wells, um, and it was all crystal or a form of crystal, but alive. It could hold memory. Let's say, for example, so let's say the buildings could hold memory. The buildings could light or dim. You know, it was a type of science that we have lost, I'd say. But I think now that I'm on that thought, now I'm going to move forward with a thought of maybe crystal type of, because limestone, I just don't see everything being limestone in this magical world. I just think it's too boring. Um, and it looks, from looking at pictures, that there is um, many examples where these buildings seem to be holding a current somehow and lighting up. Anyway, that was some divergence there. So Nocton, this is the man, Nocton, husband of Boan. Is that all we have, is it? Is that all we've got? One there. It seems to be. We're gonna take a tiny look before we go. Give that a second. This is Nocton's land. Nuada, king of the Tuatha De Danann. Good old Nuada, the man of the silver hand. So we'll Carberry Bog. So our tale has brought us all over the world and back to Ireland again. Whether it's an iconic tale that was just distributed, maybe did it really happen in Ireland? Um, like how did it happen all over the world as well? Is that just the story of Ireland? There's a mimicking story everywhere. Did it happen here? Is this the place where it began, where the override happened? In Nuada's palace, or was it in the Middle East? Um, but this land here, like what we've learned is there was potentially a gigantic crystal canal civilization in this land. And it was destroyed, and it was the Normans. Looks like it was the Normans. That these were the people that the story revolves around, and their lineages and their bloodlines. So I think that's about it for this area. I'm going to have a little wander. I'm going to try and fix myself up. And we're seeing a very different place now. We really are. The world is very different in this terms, obviously. Ridiculously different. Golf star. And Trim. So this is Carberry, this is Naughton's. This was his area, so his well. Tircrone. Whose well was that? That's not Naughton's well. This is Naughton's well. Tircrone was someone else's well. That's where we started, if you remember, episode 1, where there's a star fort buried in the ground. For anyone that hasn't seen that. I will venture to show you right now. So you can see the outline. And this is a random farmer's field, County Meath. There's an aerial photo of it. Go into a bit more detail in episode 1. Focus on this area. This is where the journey starts. The smoking gun. That's the smoking gun right there in Tircrone. Hill of Down. So we're here. We'll take one dip back over to Telltown. And we'll see the Telltown. So the goddess. So this could well have been Ernmas. So this could have been Ernmas, the mother goddess. Or this could have been Marigna, Boan. They could all be the same person. Like this could just be all her area. Like it's just maybe she lives here the majority of the time. So is this Telltown? Where's Navan? Oh yeah, Telltown's up here. So here is her well, I'd imagine. Another bog. Is that load? Does it have a name? Taltu's well. So, what is this place? What is this place, man? I don't know anymore. I just don't know. It's just getting weird. Yes, so this is what we need to look for in these. So what it is there is a slight incline, and it's given away by trees like this. You can see the incline on it. So all of these area, like that's just a big flat tabletop fort under there. It's just a big canal system under there. It's the top of it. It's the well itself. And this is the well, a well in Telltown. I mean, look, you're even looking at it here. I mean, at the moment, like I'm almost beyond trying to. I'm not trying to find shapes anymore. I've just accepted at this stage that this is the case. Like, and it comes out and it goes around, you know. These are all little canals then as well. There's ditches running along all here. So you could have had, like this could have been quite nice. I mean, I'm not sure what it looked like. Was it very marbly and sparkly, like kind of futuristic style? With trees knocking around. Let's hear what and around and up and over and around here and around here. It's literally, I mean, it's undeniable It's undeniable. This is absolutely ridiculous. It's just this is Telltown, and the bog. So bogs are wells. Bog is a well, the well of Segus. So the source of the rivers. This is where your rivers come from. Your local river comes from your local well, and these are your local wells. And I think that's probably enough. We're on 45. Next episode, I'd say it's probably going to be St. Patrick. We're going to talk about St. Patrick, episode 8. And we are going to look at St. Patrick from the point of view of where was he during all of this goings on, and who was he? I spoke a little bit about him in this episode. But he's a pretty big deal all over the world, this chap. Pretty big deal. And he's named after an innumerable amount of places. Um, Lots of cathedrals, lots of gigantic cathedrals all over the place. I have a lovely example here of one such place. So he's holding up the three-leaf clover, so the triple goddess symbology. So the three goddesses, three into the one into three. Is he the Dagda? He's Loki. He's the god of mischief, the god of magic, the god of illusion, St. Patrick. This is his cathedral in New York. New York. Are they talking New York? Epic. So St. Patrick, he's an important character. He originates in Ireland, apparently. Like, these stories are coming from Ireland. I don't know, like, if this is just a retelling of an old tale or not, but certainly the place names are matching with the places and the carnage and the forts and what's going on and the battles. But you could probably map it back onto anything. Maybe the warring was going on, like they're telling us the history of the wars. Maybe these wars did happen, and eventually, like, we or the gods, the demigods, the Firbolg leaders, the Norman leaders, the Tuatha leaders, the Fomorian leaders, um, they caused the end of the canal world, and we suffered for it, or the people. See, we. Um, I'm delighted. I love my life. Fantastic. I'm delighted to be here and investigate this and enjoy it and make the best of it. Divine power all the way, full Bruno. Um, but I think that there was a different world, and this gentleman here played a massive role into changing of the old world into the new. So we are going to discuss St. Patrick. Who was he? To me, he is probably the god Marduk. He is Loki. He is a bit of a trickster. He's a bit of a blackguard, and he's the ultimate shimmier. He put in shimmies all over the place. And my money, if I was a betting man, which I'm not, would be that he conspired with his mother. So St. Patrick and his mother, we're going to investigate her a little bit, that they conspired together to take over. And that you've got his mother would also potentially be confused with his sister. So anytime you're talking about a mother and a sister, like, you have to have, like, a father and a son can always be switched, and same with a sister and a brother. So you could have a brother and a sister who are actually a mother and a father in another story, as we've said many times. So St. Patrick and Eru, or Marigna, it looks like, because the story is, if I could find the story now, It would be good, wouldn't it? But we'll talk about it in the next one. I can't find it. But Eru basically says to American, American is the druid of the invaders. She says to him, if you name Ireland after us, you will have good fortune. And indeed they did. And I wonder, did they go off and did they take the Mees and did they blow the wells after they spoke to Patrick or after they spoke to Marduk? Um, I mean, it's also said that the Hill of Tara was Enki's domain. Enki being the god who created humans. Enki is the god who created the human race, according to the Sumerian texts, and he is the son of Marduk. He is also Indra from the Indian texts, and he is possibly Seth from the Egyptian. But his son is Marduk, and Marduk is a bit of a rogue. I think Marduk is the son he had by his mother, and he has a lot of notions. Is this the same guy? Is this the same guy? And was Enki the Dagda? So Dagda, and is this Lug, Lavada? Is it the same guy? You know, they make it out like Lug is the legend and he killed Balor, but maybe Balor was a nice guy. We're told that he's not. Maybe he only took out the evil eye sometimes. You know, sometimes people need to get destroyed. But Balor's whole land was destroyed. As we saw, Tory Island is an island now. It used to be a full piece of land up there. It looks like his whole land got obliterated. It looks like half of the west coast of Ireland got obliterated. There was more to this civilization, and a lot of land disappeared, I'd say. A lot of people disappeared with a lot of land. But I wonder, did it start here in Ireland with the well of Segus and the well? How did all who blew the wells? Who blew the wells? Patrick's Well. It's like a common name for a place. I know there's a place in Limerick called Patrick's Well. Lots of Patrick's Wells, and Patrick's related to the wells. So is he the man who helped to blow the wells? The same guy that tried to blew up the spaceport in Sinai. Although I think that they said that was Enlil. But I wonder, was there even an Enlil at this stage? Maybe Enlil was just his dad. Enlil was Anu. And they just made it out that he wasn't. So I think we're going to leave it there. We're going to hit St. Patrick next. And he's immortalized as much as Jesus. And he looks an awful lot like the Jesus character. Like here he is again. He's got the tree leaf. He's got his fancy bit of tech. Should I even look at the tech in the last one? Has he got it? He's got a book in the last one. Book of Spells. American with his book of spells from the Roman cult, from the Mardukian cult of the one god. Is that like an eye behind him? That's gas, isn't it? Isn't that gas? And look at the detail. I'll tell you now, I got married in a beautiful church that has detail. This could even be from that church, I'm wondering, because there's detail on some of the windows that would just blow your mind. You look at the detail, like this is a stained glass window. I've witnessed stained glass windows that have this level of detail. The contrast isn't even that good on this, but this is a work of absolute art on these windows. However they were made, they are a work of wonder. But that's St. Patrick there. Looks a lot like Odin. That's the man himself. St. Patrick was a 5th century Romano-British Christian missionary and bishop in Ireland. Known as the Apostle of Ireland, he is the primary patron saint of Ireland, the other patron saints being Bridget of Kildare and Columba. Patrick has never formally canonised, having lived prior to the current laws of the Catholic Church in these matters. Nevertheless, he is venerated as a saint of the Catholic Church and in the Eastern Orthodox Church, where he is regarded as equal to an apostle and enlightener of Ireland. He is also regarded as a saint within the framework of their respective doctrine by the Anglican Communion and Lutheran churches. St. Patrick is about as high level a Roman Catholic invader could get. He's held in quite high regard, and he's the patron saint of Ireland, as we well know. So, with that, I'm going to leave it there, and we're going to go and we're going to hit some St. Patrick in the next episode. We've got loads of bits and pieces here to go through, and I think that it's going to be an exciting finish. I think we're nearly done. We're nearly there. Been mind blowing. It's been great crack. I hope you've enjoyed. We're at the end of episode 7. I'm thinking, I always say, think good thoughts at the end of it. Maybe I change that up. I think it's nice to think good thoughts. Seeing as I'm so far in at this stage, you can share. Like if you've taken these videos this far, you've obviously come on the journey, and welcome. And it's an interesting journey to be on. But I really do believe in, it's an odd scenario. It's mind blowing. And I said before that, even for me, this information is quite startling. And I'm used to startling information. For someone who's not used to startling information, this could be very startling. But I'm very much a firm believer in, there's a great plan in everything, and we make the best of our own lives, and we enjoy our own lives, and we try our best to just focus on the good things, and that there is hopefully no such thing as a bad thing. We seem to have come through a difficult time in our past, and it's important now to not take for granted the nice things that we have in our life, and the little simple things, and the peace. Like, the world is relatively peaceful. My life is peaceful. It's not always perfect when I look at like international things going on, but you can't even look at it. You have to just focus on your own internal little bubble and build your own little life. For me, anyway, because that's the where I find a peace of mind, and where I find an enjoyment and a flow to do things like this. And that's it. This was a long episode. So look, thanks for joining me. I really hope you're enjoying it. And I do always say think good thoughts. And I'm going to keep on saying think good thoughts. So hasta luego. I'm not sure what that means. It means bye, doesn't it? Bye now. Great to have you. And think good thoughts.